Hello everyone, Floppy Waffle 69 here, and welcome back to the channel. Today, guys, we are going to be doing a full deep dive analysis review of the Tier 9 Zarya S. This is the Soviet battleship that is new, kind-of-ish. You could have gotten this ship a while ago in the Blue Archive event, I believe it's like the BA hovercraft, but Wargaming has officially released it again here in the Salvage for Victory event for the Sarkuf. I believe it is going to take you, 21 points in the event to obtain this ship. And I think if you're using nothing but coal, this ship is going to run you 720,000 coal. Okay, say that again, 720,000 coal, guys. First off, I'm going to make this review pretty damn quick. In my opinion, this ship, not worth that at all. The only reason you're obtaining this ship, in my humble opinion, is if you're going all in on getting the Sarkuf because you really want that ship, it's unique, blah, blah, and so and so. You are not going to be stopping here and going, you know what I want? I want to go all the way to the Zarya S and spend 720,000 coal to obtain all three of these ships, because simply that doesn't make any sense. Don't worry, I've done it for you just so we can take a look at this ship and I can make sure to let you know what makes this ship tick, what's this ship all about, and frankly, how to take her down on the battlefield. Now, basically, what is the Zarya S? So, just like the other couple ships we've looked at, the Kelowna, the Nari, this ship is actually another copy-pasted whole. Shocker. Wargaming reusing assets. That seems to be a bit of a trend lately with them, especially for the last 2-3 years. Anyways, this is a Vladivostok hull. Vladivostok is down at Tier 8 in the Soviet branch, and we've now up-tiered it up to Tier 9. Okay, this is competing with the tech line chip, the Soviet Soyuz, or however you say that, which the big difference between the two ships comes in, I guess, 2, maybe 3 different forms. Okay, one is the consumable loadout of the two ships. The Soyuz only having access to the fast damage control teams and the heal. This ship also having access to not only the fast damage control teams and the heal, but you also get a defensive AA fire in a 3rd slot, and in a 4th slot you get a patrol fighter. So those are the new consumables this ship picks up. Another difference with this ship is you actually get 2 seconds faster reload base. I believe you get a 31-second reload base with this ship compared to the Soyuz. You actually have a 33-second base reload. And the last little bit of a difference between the two ships is this ship is a little bit stealthier, which is what this ship is going to want to do. Pretty much this is, in my opinion, a Soviet battleship that you would play if you want 2-second faster reload and a little bit help with the defensive AA or against AA fire, right? You want some help assistance with anti-aircraft. Other than that, there is really no difference, and me being the one who actually really loves the Soviet Soyuz and the Soviet battleship branch entirely and its entirety, as you know, I've already made a video on that and why I believe it's actually the best beginner BB line in the game, because it helps teaches you the basics, and the grind is actually very fun. I really don't believe there to be any sort of stinker in that entire line. But in my opinion, I'd rather play the Soyuz. I just think it's just all in all the better ship. I think the hull is a better design, and I think it actually eats a little bit less citadels than the Zarya or the Vladivostok. Couple things to note about this ship also is that the torpedo protection. So I'm going to go right in and talk about the armor layout real quick. When we talk about the torpedo protection on this ship, just so you can see it real quick, this is where the torpedo protection lays on the vessel here. And it's basically only middle of the ship. There is no on the ass, and no, it really stops after that first turret. You eat a lot of torpedoes on the first turret or the nose end of this vessel, so really it kind of voids the torpedo protection of this ship. So even with the improved torpedo protection at 46% compared to the Soyuz's 35%, I find that it's really not doing that much, and it's really not that much of a bonus on this vessel just because how long this Zarya S or Vladivostok hull is, and you're more often than not eating a lot or the vast majority of the torpedoes on the nose because you want to be pointing nose in with this vessel. Almost almost treat this ship like it only has 2 turrets for the majority of the game, and until you get later on in the game or really know where the enemy threats are, either all the enemy destroyers have been eliminated off your flank and the enemy battleships are preoccupied, then you may stroll around and utilize that 3rd turret, because 9 shells going down range is vastly superior than only 6, especially when it comes to the Zarya S. The one thing to keep a note also about this ship is it has the same dispersion formula that of the tech-line Soviet battleships, meaning that the closer you get to the target, your dispersion will get better and better and better on the ship. Basically, the sweet spot, or when you really start noticing this, is anything sub 12 kilometers, in my opinion. You really start noticing your shells, groupings, and landings where exactly you want them to go more often than not. Then once you get past that, around 12 and a half and 13 and up, you're kind of starting getting that shotgunny, wonky dispersion. Though every now and then the stars do align and the Hand of Stalin does guide your shells at maximum range and you'll score a citadel. But again, that should be on the rarer side based upon the formula that Wargaming has put within these Soviet battleships. Okay, looking back at the armor layout, you could see you come in with this massive 32mm nose, this 32mm ass. You do pick up this 50mm deck plating, which is super nice. And then your upper belt is around 254 meters, while your armor belt is actually 406. And as you can see, just like in Soviet fashion, this ship has a massive citadel. But I want to talk about that for a minute, because I do think the armor scheme of these ships is perfect. I think it's awesome game design. I think battleships should be able to deflect a lot of the incoming armor-piercing shells targeted at its vessel, but the second they show too much, or they get over cocky, or like overconfident, or if you pick up broadsiding shots in them, then they deserve to be punished. If you can outmaneuver them and position them, like outposition them, and get those flanking shots, you do deserve to get citadels, which I do like to see. I believe battleships should be able to punish enemy battleships, especially with citadel ribbons. Moving into the survivability of the ship, you have 73,500 HP, again with that 46% torpedo belt reduction, but I already talked about what I believe, like how relevant that actually is, so don't pay that too much mind. Artillery, you do pick up the same as the Vladivostok, the 3x3 406mm guns. With the build I'm running, you are picking up that 27.3 second reload, which is actually quite nice for our 406mm guns. Again, the 180-degree turn time is quite a bit of an ouch at 51 seconds. You will notice the turret traverse on the ship is relatively slow, so make sure you pre-aim your turrets where you want to shoot, because if you're caught in any sort of brawling-like situation and don't have them within the right direction that you want to be shooting your guns, it is going to be pretty painful, and you're going to have to utilize your left and right rudder in order to turn your turrets to bear, or come to bear faster, essentially. Maximum range is 18.9, which isn't the best, but again, you really don't want to be shooting from these ranges anyways, based upon the dispersion formula. High explosive shells, 5850, 41% fire chance. You actually do set a fair amount of fires with the ship, I have noticed, but honestly, I very rarely ever utilize the HE on the ship because the armor piercing is just so effective, and it's 406mm AP, which overmatches 27mm of armor. Again, looking at the armor piercing on the ship, 13,500. Again, both the shell velocities, or initial velocities, of the HE and the AP match each other at 793 meters a second. Again, comfortable. I don't find myself having to like really lead the targets where I want to be shooting from anyways. Pretty damn comfortable shells to utilize. Looking at the secondary armament, again, you have the 6x2 152s, and you have the 6x2 100mm. Again, they're secondary batteries. You have them at your disposal. This is not a secondary battery ship. Please don't spec for secondaries, because you're going to get horrendous results out of them. They're there for the occasional fire set, or with the last little chunk damage you need on a low health destroyer or cruiser. That is what they are there for. Looking at the AA defense of the ship was actually, I don't want to say not bad, but it can be decent against tier 8 carriers, because you can supplement it with the defensive AA fire consumable, also with the fighters as well consumable, which both supplement this ship's AA suite fairly well. Moving into the maneuverability of the ship, you have 29 knots as a top speed with the build that I'm currently running, turning circle radius of 950 meters and a rudder shift time of 17.1 seconds. The ship handles like typical Soviet battleships should handle. They are pretty sluggish and pretty slow, so they want to be pointed usually nose in or at a steep angle to really get the most out of your armor and increase your survivability substantially. Going into the concealment, again, with the build that I am currently running, it is down to 13.5, and that's with the consumable or not the consumable, the upgrade module mounted. Again, with the commander skill mounted on this ship, we can go ahead and get this down to 12.1, which is a massive advantage to our ship. So we're going to want to make sure we take concealment on this ship, especially so we can get in and fight those brawling-like battles. This is definitely more of a frontline battleship, just like other Soviet BBs. Again, you're going to have to be wary of ships that have torpedoes, especially enemy battleships that have those. Other than that, with your armor and your decent guns that do have, you know, can pack quite a punch, and their increased dispersion at closer ranges, this is quite a force. Again, though, you're not winning too many prizes other than just a couple second faster reload over the Soyuz. Other than that, I still think the Soyuz, in my opinion, is the vastly superior ship, and it just comes down to the hull. And again, it's a tech tree ship. You can just play the game and unlock that ship for free rather than spending a ton of coal, and or if you did the BA hovercraft event to get this ship through the Blue Archive event or Wishing Wharf event, which is just ridiculous. Anyways, I think it was like, what, 100 and something US standard dollars, like up there, like almost 150 US standard dollars. It was ridiculous. So anyways, let's take a look at the upgrades of the ship. We are utilizing Damage Control Party Modification 1. This is to increase the action time of the Damage Control Party. We are coming in next with Damage Control Systems Mod 1. We're following up with Aiming Systems Modification 1, following up with Damage Control Systems Mod 2, following up with Concealment Systems Modification 1, and topping off with Main Battery Modification 3. All in all, guys, I had a decent experience with the Zarya S, but in my opinion, you can get equal to results in your Soviet Soyuz. I really don't see the draw to the ship, in my opinion. I do think it's vastly superior to ships like the Nari, or whatever, the Pan-Asian ship we covered in our last video. But again, for the amount of coal that they're asking for this ship, it simply doesn't make any logical sense to invest in this ship unless you're going to be doing the Sarkuf. In my opinion, unless you're a collector and you really, really love your Soviet BBs, I could understand the argument to be made. But in regards of a, doing your research on specific ships, spending it where it needs to be spent, and making certain investments, I really don't see it, at least in my opinion. So without further ado, guys, that is the port analysis portion of this video. Let's get on into the gameplay portion. Alrighty, and here we are in battle. This is the first of 2 games I have to showcase for you guys. Relatively shorter games. I also will flip up or show up the commander build and corresponding upgrades as a kind of a reminder, refresher to you guys, so you can kind of see what I'm working with and utilizing. And yes, there are 2 games I'm showcasing here today. The reason why I'm showing 2 games is because the first game is really high octane, full throttle, and it's on the shorter side of things, but it's arms race. So take this with a pinch of salt. Things don't get too crazy. I don't survive for too long, but I want to showcase to you what you can do with this ship in a brawling-like scenario. Now, obviously, when it comes to brawling, this is like your flat-out straight BB brawler. There are other brawlers in the game that brawl in different ways. For standard, for example, you have secondary brawlers, which will burn you down and do like chip damage on the side while doing decent amount of damage with their guns. And then there's like high octane brawlers like you have like this that rely more on their guns, right? So you have different types of brawlers. And again, this ship doesn't have torpedoes. And the only real mitigation you have to your torpedoes is your torpedo bulges, which again are only towards the middle of the ship. But like a big problem with this ship too is because your nose is so long, you're most likely going to be eating the torpedoes in your nose. So make sure you have as active as a rudder as possible, and make sure you can predict where those torpedoes are going to be coming, like we see here against the Changmu, and we have to inevitably turn in. Okay. This ship for me, another big pro to this ship is it is a tier 9 premium ship, which means you do get tier 9 premium income, and being a premium ship, you can go ahead and bounce your commander. So if you're already sitting on a 21-point commander trained for, like for Soviets, you can go ahead and throw him on this bitch, and you can get, access to the 21-point skills, whatever you utilize from a commander right away, which again is super nice. Again, I usually don't do this. Again, I just put Kuznetsov or whatever his name is, the legendary commander, on here just for the sake of the video. I'm training a separate commander that's only at 13, but I wanted to showcase what this ship can do if you have a spec'd out 21-point commander. And it is a big bonus to have Kuznetsov, as legendary commanders are just flat out better in this game, which I've never really been a fan of. I've always been a fan of, kind of leveling up the playing field, because with a ship that has, and a commander that has access to, like the legendary commander here, compared to someone who doesn't, you're going to have distinct advantages through the talents and badges that can be awarded, like earned during the game by, being procced or whatever. So it's one of those things I can't stand, but Wargaming has deemed it to be fine and okay, whatever, no harm, no foul. So we're gonna go ahead and utilize him on this ship for this battle. Honestly, there's really not much to talk about with this ship, given the fact of what I've already stated. I've already told you the pros. As you already can see, the cons of this ship. I have noticed that the turrets do get knocked out from time to time. Even if you do manage to slot the Damage Control Systems Mod 1 in that very first slot of upgrade slot, and you opt to take the Main Armaments Modification 1, I still have noticed that the turrets do get knocked out on this thing. It's just going to happen. I don't really have that issue with my Vladivostok, so I'm just wondering if I'm just curious, why that is. But yeah, I mean, I looked at the Vladdy, and the same armor layout is within those turrets, so there really should be no problem, right? There really should no be big deal here between the two ships. But there is, and I have noticed it, that these ships do, or this ship in particular, the Zarya, does get its turrets knocked out quite a fair amount. Anyways, again, like I already mentioned, this ship does have access to some different consumables, which mainly being the defensive AA fire and patrol fighter. Now, you're probably thinking, oh, wow, I've picked up both these consumables. This ship must have a really, really good AA suite. And you'd be wrong. That is just not the case. It is actually just not true. I think it's put there to kind of create like a false sense of, hey, I actually have a decent AA suite. Don't drop me carriers or you're going to lose immense amount of planes. Not really true. I mean, the patrol fighter can, I guess, give you some immunity to some degree, because they're basically going to be punished if they decide to strike you. And I guess your defensive AA fire will give you the illusion that your AA is doing a little bit better than it actually is. Again, I don't want to trash AA too much. That's not really what this channel is about. But just keep in mind that you're really not an AA battleship, okay? But there's a quick example of what the ship can do in brawling-like scenarios. So now here in game 2, we're going to be playing a little bit more standard, kind of what you would actually expect during a battle. What we're going to do first, we're going to sail up into, utilizing an island to mitigate or minimize the amount of ships that can target our vessel, and we're just going to kind of bow tank here. Again, the nemesis to bow tanking is the submarine, so I'm having to use a lot of caution and knowing where this guy is at, making sure that he is without his range of his homing in torpedoes, which I believe is, 11 kilometers. So hopefully my team can keep him preoccupied, because he is a big reason and can really prevent me from having a decent game if he is allowed to essentially keep homing torpedo me with immunity. But as you're going to see this game, we're going to keep our nose forward, keep track of where all the threats are, especially those large caliber armor piercing guns, and kind of keep those to basically to angle towards those guns is what we want to do with this ship. Basically, how you would play your Soviet BBs if you already have played the Soviet BBs is exactly how you're going to play this thing. There's really nothing new. The ship isn't bringing anything unique that you can't already get in the game. It's just simply another ship that you can obtain, in my opinion. And I think it has duped a lot of people. I think a lot of people see, the defensive AA, the patrol fighter, the new ship, and they're like, oh, wow, this thing, maybe it's a first Soviet BB that actually has pretty damn good AA. Not to say that the Kremlin doesn't, but back in the day, as you recall, the AA mounts would get knocked and destroyed out of those things so easy. So, like, it really had no time to utilize its AA. But the Kremlin actually has decent AA. But again, what is decent AA to a skilled commander of an aircraft carrier? He's just going to bypass your flak, and he's still going to strike you and take minimal losses in return. Now that the Zarya has the patrol fighter that can, I guess, prevent, maybe create like, hey, if you're going to strike me, you're going to potentially lose the rest of your squadron. I guess that you can utilize that. It can't spot anymore, so it's only good for CV defense. And then also on the contrary, you have the defensive AA fire consumable, which will indeed help you with doing those raw damage and flak damage as well, if you can manage to utilize it, right? I believe your flak is coming in at 4+1. So again, not the best, right? Again, this is all a false sense of like, hey, I actually have decent AA, because you really don't. So don't fall for that if you have this ship, or if you're playing this ship. You still need to utilize your allies and position your ship accordingly, because if you're caught off guard on a flank or whatnot, CVs will eat your ship alive. I would also hate to imagine what super aircraft carriers would do to this thing. If tier 10 aircraft carriers can already shit on you, just imagine what super carriers can do for you, okay? Or do against you. Again, we're slowly moving up, making sure we know and going over all our threats, where they're at, and making sure that we pre-aim our turrets to where the threat can be. If you don't know, I like using the Control X function on the keyboard. This locks your turrets to a specific bearing. I do this sometimes when I know I'm going to be doing a full turn, like a full gamer turn or whatnot. I might, if I'm going to turn left, I might lock my turrets on the right side so they're already ready to fire when I've made my full turn. Sometimes I do this if I want to like drop on a submarine. I don't want to constantly traverse my turrets just to look at where the sub's at, and I keep them on the left side of my ship like you just saw here. I will say, though, the dispersion actually isn't terrible on these guns. It is the same, exact same as the Soyuz. You're still going to get that 1.7 sigma value. Sigma just meaning how, the frequency or consistency of your shells landing towards the center of your ellipse. 1.7 is pretty standard for battleships, I would have to say, especially at this tier. Again, you're not gaining any vertical dispersion bonus or horizontal dispersion bonus unless you're within this, or sub 12 kilometers. But like every Soviet battleship gets that essentially, so it's not really that much of a bonus. Again, when you do get access and you do see the shells, like when you get in closer around those like 12-kilometer ranges and you do witness your dispersion values getting diminished and your accuracy getting heavily increased, it is nice to see. That's usually a good reminder that you're playing the ship where it needs to be played to get the most out of her, basically in her element. I've talked about this a lot on my channel. Knowing where your ship plays at, like its element, is only going to help you learn better positioning and essentially become more proficient in playing your ship. Again, these are 406 millimeter guns, so knowing armor values of specific ships, knowing where to aim, is only going to help you elevate your gaming experience. I do like that it is 406 millimeter guns. Again, I'm not a big fan of the constant 457s or larger guns being added into the game, because I believe it floods the game with these massive caliber guns that just makes cruisers harder and harder to play, right? It should take a little bit of accuracy and gunnery skills required to get the most out of your guns, and I feel like now it's just become a point and click meta. Was not anticipating the Des Moines doing this. Quite interesting play by him, but I guess he figured he had nothing to lose. Really doesn't make much sense, but hey, you know what? I could have done the exact same thing in less the time if I didn't fire at the key already, but obviously the key is angling to me and he's getting ready to shoot me, so I'm going to make sure I shoot my guns and start to angle. Notice how I'm utilizing the island to my right to kind of block line of sight and the angle or firing angle from all those battleships on my right as well. Just kind of a thing to keep in mind. Having good situational awareness and constantly checking your minimap is not a bad idea, and you really should become more familiar and efficient doing that, because it's going to lead to you surviving more games and understanding, and reading that minimap is going to allow you to make better reads and plays throughout the course of the game, which again is huge at this game. That's what I really love about this game, is something like a maneuver or a decision you make 3-4 minutes prior to now can determine how the next sequence of events plays out in the next 2-3 events, right? So really cool stuff. Just make sure you utilize that and do that yourself. Obviously, I understand that the Jean Bart is engaged with my Kelowna, so I'm going to come around utilizing the Cyclone to my advantage, only being detected at 8 kilometers or within, and hopefully I can catch him with his pants down. Sure enough, we come around this island. He's done exactly what I thought he was going to do. He's going to push forward, pretty much broadside to me. And again, we're going to take full advantage of the increased dispersion on this thing, and we're going to pound him for about 15,000 damage, which is awesome. Again, no citadels. French battleships can be notoriously kind of trolly with the spaced armor and turtlebacks that they do have. Though their turtlebacks aren't as proficient as that of the Germans, they are still turtlebacks, and they do help protect French battleships from kind of getting, citadels here and there. Again, if you get super close to these ships, as I've shown in previously other games, you can absolutely punish French citadels if you get within close, because you can, pretty sure you can just overmatch those turtleback slopes, and just completely, if your pen's high enough, it's just going to go right through that and void it. We're trying to anticipate where the enemy submarine is coming, so we're going to go ahead and drop over here. Obviously, he's not there. We spot him after we drop both our ASWs. Kind of a mistake by me. You should really never blind drop two ASWs. You should always keep one in your back pocket in case the submarine does something like this. Tough shit. You know, you live and you learn, right? So, anyways, my final thoughts about the Zarya S. Right, that's what you call this ship, I think. In my opinion, it's really not a good. It's not a good ship because, in my opinion, and it has nothing to do with the ship itself. The ship is decent, I guess, if that's what you want to call. In my opinion, the ship doesn't make any sense because why would I spend either real money, doubloons, or coal on a ship that I could essentially play or obtain for free by just playing the Soviet Battleship line? That's kind of my main review of the ship. It just makes me scratch my head and wonder, was there enough of a difference between the Zarya S and the Soyuz? No, I don't think there really is, other than a 2-second better reload. And again, is that 2-second reload going to help you? Yeah, it does help you in some situations. I have noticed that. So that is not bad, I guess, if you really want to, if you're really splitting hairs to decide whether or not. But in my opinion, guys, save the coal. Unless you're going in for the French submarine there, the Sarkouf, it's just really not worth it. I would just save the coal and hold on to other coal ships that you either have yet to obtain or other coal ships that they are hopefully going to add to the armor. In my opinion, from this event, I think they should add all three of these ships for coal for the reasonable tier, accordingly or equivalent price. In game. It would be nice to see some new ships in the armory for coal that we haven't seen for quite some time. So, anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to this quickened, little hastened review of the Zarya S. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, guys, and peace out.